Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How are you? A big mahalo for tuning in, and I hope you're doing good. Today, I'm fortunate to have a legendary guitarist joining me for a conversation. Fans can hear him and see him on the new live DVD, Live at the Tivoli, and also look for him playing live with recent HPR guest John Jorgensen, as well as his own shows with his Hogan's Heroes. He's a vet of working with Eric Clapton, Emmylou Harris, Joe Cocker, and Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings, just to name some highlights. We'll hear about his fascinating life as one of the great guitarists in the world. He's a humble guy, but his finger style and picking technique have made him a guitarist's favorite guitarist. It's a great honor to welcome Albert Lee. A big aloha and mahalo, Brother Albert.
Well, thank you. It's great. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, man, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it, and glad this could work out at the right time.
Good to be talking with you.
Thank you for taking a moment for me here. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, you're welcome.
And now you are a cat who, how far back do you go with John, who was our recent guest? We had him here. He's actually in the building. We did a bunch of different stuff with him. How far back do you go with him?
I think I first met him, let's see, about 1974. I met him in a music store up in Santa Barbara, and I also saw him around that time when he was working at Disneyland. He was one of the strolling musicians around the streets of Disneyland. That's when I first met him.
And what were you doing at Disneyland, just hanging out?
Oh, I was just there, probably with my kids, yeah.
What a great place to meet someone.
Yeah.
It's funny how you sort of have a kind of a connection to Hawaii in two different ways via an artist that you've worked with. Yvonne Elliman, do you remember getting to work with Yvonne?
Well, yeah.
Gemini Sweet?
Yes, I remember that album very well, although I didn't actually meet her at the time. I just went in and did my part, late one night after a gig. So I didn't, it wasn't all done at the same time, because there was a lot going on that record.
Yeah. Yes, there was. That's the way to put it. Did you ever get to actually meet her?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, years later. I can't remember what it was, but we've met once or twice.
Wasn't she still in Clapton's Band when you joined, or no? Had she just left?
Oh no, she'd gone by then. So it was just for a while. It was just me doing the harmonies, and no girls in the band when I was there.
Well, you still had a nice run. How did you first meet Eric?
About 1965 in London. He'd just started to work with John Mayall, and I was working with another artist around at the same time, working for the same agent. I was working with Chris Farlow, and we became friends then, and we've been friends ever since. I knew him when he started out with Cream, and in fact, we opened for Cream on a gig in Germany in 1966. And then, of course, he went on to bigger things, and I didn't really see a lot of him over the years until later on in the 70s, when we ended up on a session together, and he asked me to join his band. So that was the start of a 5-year relationship, and it was a lot of fun.
So you're saying, in what you've just said here, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time that you actually did anything professionally with him was that gig you opened for him in '66 in Germany when he was with Cream?
I think so. Yeah. That would have been. We jammed together there was a club in London run by the management where all of the bands used to work at some time or other during the week, and it would start at 8 o'clock in the evening with two bands, and then another two bands would take over at 12:30 till about 4:30. So during that period, I'd run into him, and he'd sit in with my band, and I'd sit in with his, and so we became friends. That was 65 or so.
Did you find, that you're the kind of guy who, by most guitar players' standards, is easily a peer to Clapton? You're not somebody on a different plane whatsoever, but yet I've heard from you that you're really an observant guy. I've heard about you that you're an observant guy and you pick up things wherever you go. Were there things that you can point to that you learned from Eric Clapton during your time in his band?
Oh, well, I'm sure there were. The fact that, I'm blessed with or cursed with a very fluid technique, and so I'm inclined to let it run away with me at times, but would play a solo, and he'd really take his time with it and milk it, and it's become quite apparent to me over the years that audiences can appreciate that more than the fireworks,
So I'm picking...
More of a common denominator there that they can latch onto,
So you're pointing to something great. You have a great answer to my question. You're saying you learn to appreciate a different approach to soloing through observing his maybe tighter solos?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. And, his method of soloing, if it was a tune that had a lot of chord changes, mm-hmm. he would play a solo that would stay in a certain position, and he'd make a more limited number of notes work over that chord sequence. Whereas if I was to play a solo of it, I'd be playing like dozens of notes and playing around all the chords, but his solos were and still are, very accessible.
I love it. It's a less is more approach, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That's happening, brother. I love the analysis right from the man. I get chicken skin just hearing you describe it like that. Another Hawaii connection that you have, or maybe you didn't think of it as such, and who could blame you if you hadn't, would be Willie Nelson. How tight are you with Willie? I know you've gotten to dabble with him and stuff.
I first met him when I was working with Emily Harrison around 76, and she would open for him, and I was very friendly with his band, and once I'd finished Emmylou's set, they'd call me on to sit in with them. And in fact, I'd get up and play the piano for 2 or 3 songs until Willie's sister showed up.
Nice.
She wasn't always there for the first song, so I'd be there playing the piano, and then she'd wander on the stage, and then I'd grab a guitar, and so that was my first introduction to Willie, and I think I played on one of his albums, and
he's a hero.
To him over the years, I've run into him many times,
He's a hero in the community. He lives on Maui, and
oh, he does. Yeah, I have no idea where he is now. Yeah, well, good for him. That's great.
Yeah, and so whenever anything's wrong or there's a need for a benefit or somebody to do some good and try to help out, he's always doing it.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, no, he's good about things like that. Yeah.
What do you think it is that has drawn you to all these different people throughout your life, that you've gotten to have these unique celebrities and or just musical icons, for lack of a better word, pioneers in many ways that have wanted to work with you? Is there anything you can point to? I know you think of your style, perhaps your fluid style. Anything else maybe about your approachability?
Well, I like to think that way back when in the 60s and 70s, I had a style that was a little different to what was going on. I got a lot of influences, from American players, but I was also, in England and playing kind of R&B and it was a different approach. So when I eventually took up with country music, which I loved, and there wasn't much of an outlet for it in England, I came to America, and I guess I was an instant hit amongst a lot of players, and it was quite eye-opening to come to Los Angeles, and within a short period of time, I was working with some of my heroes, and it went on from there. I've been very lucky. I've worked with so many people.
When you say that to me, what's the picture in your when you said I've come to Los Angeles and work with some of my heroes or so many of my heroes? What was flashing in your mind right as you said that?
Well, players. Like I met up with Glenn Campbell and was jamming with him, and guys that were studio guys like Joe Osborne and Buddy Emmons, Byron Berline, John Hartford, Al Perkins. These were all guys that used to play at a bar not far from where I'm living now. And at least once a week, I used to play with these guys. And Don Everly had just split up with his brother, so he was leading a band out at this club. It was a very small bar, but it had quite a following. A lot of people used to try and jam in there, And so I got to be big friends with Don Everly, and I worked with him for quite a while and did an album with him, and always hoped that if he and his brother their problems, I'd end up playing with the Everly Brothers, and it finally happened. Like 1984. Actually, 83. They did the reunion concert at the Royal Albert Hall in London, and it was
a dream come true.
Yeah, it was really, and I thought, well, that's it. I've done one gig with the Everly Brothers. That's it. They're not going to do much more, So, I wonder what I'd be able to do with them. I wonder if they'll do any more, And lo and behold, the next year we all did an album, and then we did a big tour of the States. I thought, wow, this is great. Here I am. I'm on the road with the Everly Brothers, and it actually went on for over 20 years. I was just amazed, and it was a really good part of my life,
A couple things that you mentioned that I want to hit on. When you talked about the 60s, briefly, did you actually, in the sequence of events, in the way it worked out, did you actually replace Jimmy Page and Neil Christian's The Crusaders, and then Ritchie Blackmore followed you?
Yeah, well, I did. I knew Jimmy in London when I was 17. I was playing at a little coffee bar in the centre of London, and I'd already been professional for about a year. I did my first tour in 1960 when I was 16, and the following year I was going out and doing gigs, but also I was in the house band at this little coffee cellar, and a lot of musicians used to come in, and Jimmy Page was a year younger than me. He used to come down there and sit in, and he was with Neil Christian at that time, and I think it was a year or so later that he left to do something else. I don't know if he went with the Yardbirds, or I don't know where he went, but the gig came up with Neil Christian, and I did it for a few weeks, and there was another gig too. There was a singer named Mike Hurst, who was part of a group called the Springfields, and Dusty Springfield was the lead singer. And Mike Hurst did an album, and I think Jimmy Page had played on it, and he wanted to do some gigs, and so Jimmy wasn't available, so I took over from Jimmy on those tours there for a while, for a couple of weeks.
And any interaction with Ritchie?
Well, I ran into Ritchie quite a bit during the 60s. I think he was a big admirer of my playing, although our styles are quite different, which is obviously apparent. But you have to realize all those guys at that time who were coming up in the early 60s were influenced by the same kind of music. Right. We were listening to Scotty Moore and James Burton and Cliff Gallup, all the old rock and roll guitar players, and then towards the middle of the 60s, a lot of blues records became available in the UK. So a lot of the players went in that direction, and I went in the opposite direction. I went towards country. But when we all started out, we were we were all trying to copy Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran and all those guys, you know.
There's no question that you guys were all sort of coming from the same well in some ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the other part of that, which you brought up again now, the second time, and so almost for making sure that I don't forget to talk about it with you, you've had this, like, I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's a gift, it's a privilege, an honor, and I'm sure it's all those things to you, but it makes people who are your fans both, curious and envious. You got to work with some big-time early rockers. Jerry Lee Lewis, the London sessions. How did that thing come to be? Try to walk me through getting to be there with the Killer.
It was decided by his record company that he'd do a record in the UK and get a load of names on it, and the studio was packed with players, Rory Gallagher and Alvin Lee and, just lots of players. I was in a band called Head, Hands and Feet at the time, and we had quite a reputation as being like a musician's band.
Right.
So we were pretty much the rhythm section for the whole album, and so I got to play on all the tracks,
And what's a favorite memory of being there with him? Anything that comes to mind, like something you treasure, maybe a moment or time and experience that really resonates with you?
He was quite a character, and he still is, of course, and he'd wander in every day. Each day, it went over the course of a week, and he'd come in every day, a little later each day, and he'd have a bottle of whiskey and his cigars. He'd put them on the piano, and God help anybody that touched them, And there were at least 3 or 4 cassette players underneath his piano taping everything that went on, just because, everybody was such a fan of his playing, And, it was a great experience, We did a lot of cover songs, and some new songs. And we never played more than 3 takes. Usually it was like the second take. We'd routine it and then do it. And it was a great experience, yeah.
Did you get to spend any downtime with him, or was it all pretty much working?
Yeah, it was all in the studio. I didn't hang with him, really,
Bo Diddley, you did a similar sort of thing with, yeah?
Yeah, I was recruited to do... He was doing an album, and it's a TV show as well, and we rehearsed over at ABC Studios in Burbank. And I remember we were in there, and Tim Bogart was on bass, the world's loudest bass player. And we were pretty loud, And the Johnny Carson show was going on in the next studio, and they came in and asked us to turn it down. They could hear it through the walls, So Bo was a really lovely guy, a great guy. I went to Australia with him. I played a rock and roll tour there with Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry, Everly Brothers, Bo Diddley, and Leslie Gore, I think it was. And that was quite an experience, And Bo was a real gentleman, great guy.
Were you backing him up, or was that part of the Everleys?
We didn't back him. No, there were various bands. I think he took his own band, his own rhythm section.
I used to love watching him, and he'd say he had such a foul mouth live. It was very authentic. I really
yeah.
I enjoyed that, dude. As we wrap it up with you, there was a gig that I believe we crossed paths at, and in 2007, December 10th of 2007, Mr. Lee, were you there at the O2?
Which one was this? Was this the Armageddon show?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That was quite an experience too, But I have to say that Led Zeppelin kind of hijacked the show, because it was a tribute to Armageddon, and then it turned into a Led Zeppelin show, So I think some of the artists were a little peeved by that, But it was a great night, It was a good experience.
What's a favorite memory of getting to do that gig with the great Bill Wyman?
Oh, well, I've been working with Bill for like 12, 13 years now. I'm working with him in the fall in the UK. I work with him quite regularly. And he's still out there, he's 74 now and still wants to do it, and Yes, he quit smoking 2 years ago. He'd been smoking for like, I don't know, 60 years. And he's just amazing. He just keeps going.
No, he's very special. I've interviewed him before for like an hour, and I met him that night at the after show that you guys did. That was really cool. In the Indigo Club, and
right, yeah.
And Sam Moore got up there, and Paul Rogers.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, no, that was happening stuff. And as the final note, you're often confused with a man that you did mention because you've gotten to work with him, Alvin Lee, which it must happen. I mean, it happened to me. I was saying, yeah, I'm talking to Albert Lee, and my buddy was like, oh man, I loved him at Woodstock. I'm like, no.
Well, it it's happened for many, many years, and I hardly take any notice of it, really. So sometimes if I'm rushed after a gig, and someone will catch me the wrong way, they'll say, and they'll be talking to me for 5 minutes, and and then they'll mention Woodstock and Going Home or whatever the song was, and I say, I'm sorry, but no, you've got the wrong guy, and leave it at that, But we've known each other for a long time. We were in Hamburg together, and playing the clubs there in 1962, I think. And he was Alvin then, but it's not his real name. So, there aren't many real Lees out there.
Are you a fan of his playing?
Oh yeah, no, he's a good player. Yeah, and he's a good guy too. Yeah, I saw him in Monaco 2 or 3 years ago. I was playing there with Bill, and he was there also, not on the same show, but it was nice to run into him, after such a long time.
Yeah, you guys have done all kinds of stuff. Hey, you've been a true gentleman to take so much time for me today. I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. It's a privilege.
Pleasure. Any time. It's a pleasure.
Okay.
Well, I'm quite proud of what I've done, really. I've been very lucky over the years. I've worked with some great people, and I'm busier now than I've ever been. So, I feel very fortunate in that respect.
Yeah, your site looks happening, the Hogan's Heroes, all those dates you guys got coming up live. I'm stoked for you too, brother. You're a monster. We just got to get you to Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to come again. It's been a long time since I was there. Yeah.
When did you come?
Well, I was there early 70s with Joe Cocker. We stopped off on our way to Australia. And also played there with the Everly Brothers, too, early in the 80s on our way to Australia.
Wow, I've never been back.
Yeah, no, I think that's just twice, yeah.
Well, you never know. Maybe we can make something creative happen. We have a really nice 75-seat performance hall at our radio station. We're the NPR station out here, too.
Okay.
So, I don't know. We could stay in touch. Maybe there's a way we could bring you here on the cheap to do something in our performance space. Just an idea.
Certainly possible, yeah.
I high-five you, dude. You're a good man, and please, you stay in touch. Anything I can ever do for you, you don't hesitate to get in touch. You hear?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Be safe, brother.
All right, all the best. Thanks, Dave.
You too. Aloha, Albert.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.